can't waste time on animation. I wanted to do something in Unreal. It is definitely where the industry is going, at least for Previz especially. I was watching X-Men 97 and I'm like, that is wicked cool. What do you mean Cyclops is like stopping his free fall with his eyes? That's insane.
What do you love about the Previs process?
Working on these Marvel movies, the storyboarders that they normally have on those are phenomenal. It is so much fun to then translate those to 3D because there's a really big difference between what you can like draw and then what we can like actually make.
And that's the importance of Previs, to not only work out what works, but also like what's not working.
There's that constant conversation you have to have with yourself where you stop and you look at every shot and you have to be like, is this telling an important part of the story? You have an idea that makes it to screen and you hear the pop from the crowd. Best feeling ever.
Trent, welcome to the VFX Process. If you could just give us a brief introduction to who you are and what you do.
I'm Trent Fortune. I'm an animator and Previs and post-viz artist. My career started in finals animation and slowly developed into specializing in Previs and post-viz throughout the years. I've gotten to work in Montreal because of that, which is where I worked on my first finals movie, which was Cats, which is the one that I always end up talking about the most, but I love it.
Did you remove any cats' buttholes?
I wasn't a comper, so that would not have been my job.
Okay.
But
you put the cat buttholes in the shot?
no, nor was I a texture artist or modeler.
Oh, yeah.
Not my business. I would have covered areas with tails and stuff, so no matter what everyone else feels about it, it's probably still one of my favorite projects to date. You know, I was able to specialize later on a lot of Marvel projects like Doctor Strange, the Marvels, She-Hulk, obviously I'm wearing the shirt.
That would be funny if that was the one that you forgot.
Yeah, I know. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Like the past year has been super fun to watch these movies come out. It's just been really exciting working on these Marvel movies, especially because with Previz, if you have an idea that makes it to screen and you hear the pop from the crowd, it's like the most fulfilling, best feeling ever. So,
you know, what do you love about the Previs process?
I was interning at a studio here in Atlanta, and we had a few guys once come in briefly for a short contract. They were like in between projects at the third floor, and they were Previs guys. And I had never really heard of Previs much beforehand. I really liked finals animation, but from what I learned from them was with Previs, you don't have to like nail down every single keyframe to like perfection. Getting into animation, I want to get like fun ideas out there. I just want to animate something. Obviously, it focuses a lot on cameras, composition, animation, and the movement that happens in frame. Like when that itself gets bought off as a Previs artist, it's so rewarding. But eventually, yeah, then I got to third floor. I think my first project was She-Hulk.
Awesome, man. Where did you gain your kind of knowledge of camera movement, cameras, and how important that is for the storytelling part? Because I guess in Previs, especially when you're a shot creator, you can be a great animator, but the relationship between, you know, the camera and the characters, or whether it's not a character or something else, that's very important.
My senior film when I was in college, I looked up a bunch of like Aardman shorts because they're all these shorts that they take place mostly from like one or two angles. My film ended up being about a space guy who was stuck on an asteroid. For the camera, I'm like, okay, all I need is like, you know, my foreground and background. There's not really even like a middle ground or anything. And that was the first time I like strung a bunch of cameras together, and I was like, this is actually kind of fun. It was hard because in space, there's no points of reference, especially if you're orbiting something.
It's such a powerful tool to have under your belt, especially, you know, if you want to go into creating your own like shorts or movies, you know, that knowledge and the skill to be able to like put that idea down and take it from storyboards and bring it to life a little bit to kind of like pitch your idea. It's such a great tool for a filmmaker.
Yeah, especially now, you know, since the strikes have started, the thing that I see all the time on like LinkedIn is people saying like, just do a short film in Unreal. Like it's a great way to learn Unreal, and you know, you kind of get to learn storytelling and everything. And this was why I did like the Cyclops things. I was like, now that I have Previs under my belt, if I have one idea, I can't just do it in one or two shots. I have like the echoes of supervisors past being like, oh, it's great that, you know, he's landing, but we want a contact shot, and we want like the effects shot, and we want like the lead up.
You know, and that's the importance of Previz to not only work out what works, but also like what's not working.
There's that constant conversation you have to have with yourself where you stop and you look at every shot and you have to be like, is this telling an important part of the story? Did I put this in here just because it looks cool? Sometimes that's okay. Not always, you just have to be comfortable with throwing shots and sequences sometimes away. Like even with this, my goal was to stick with that little animated short like that the sequence had. I think I could have taken out one or two shots after seeing it translated to 3D versus the 2D-ness of it.
It's a great exercise, and I told one of our interns like last year, is take things that already exist and turn them into a sequence. For example, like comics, you've kind of got to bring it to life from a still image, but you've got to understand how to interpret it or how to bring it to life without just doing something random. You can have purpose for the shot.
That's one of my favorite parts about working on those Marvel shows. The storyboarders that they normally have on those are phenomenal. I remember getting the storyboards and I was like, these look like comic book panels. It is so much fun to then translate those to 3D because there's a really big difference between what you can like draw and then what we can like actually make. But that's also kind of the fun of it, is like finding the puzzle pieces that fit in to make it look as visually stunning as those drawings do.
The project that we're going to be talking about is the Cyclops project. Can you just tell us about the reason for this little kind of project that you created in Unreal Engine?
Again, since the wave of like how the strikes have affected the industry, had a lot of time on my hands and I wanted to do something in Unreal. I think it is definitely where the industry is going, at least for Previz, especially because it's like a beautiful renderer and the sequencer is awesome. And I was looking for inspiration for a while. I was watching X-Men 97. I watched this first episode and I'm like, that is wicked cool. What do you mean Cyclops is like stopping his free fall with his eyes? That's insane. I never read the comics. I always watched the movies, so I didn't know he was such like a main character. And then so when I was brainstorming ideas, my process like for starting is sometimes I'll look at my assets. I don't want to like approach a project and halfway through find out like, oh, I don't know how to make laser eyes. You need to think of like the whole project before getting into the nitty gritty of it.
What's the process of getting for you, Trent, getting your characters and animation into Unreal?
So for this specific one, I animated it in Maya and I exported it as an Alembic. This is what the animation looked like. He was just animated in space. Freefall does his dialogue. There's an issue that sometimes pops up when you export from Alembics from Maya to Unreal. It's an error that has to do with polygon faces. I believe it's like it has more than like 4 faces. I found a couple of YouTube videos that I can share the links to help, and you use a multi-cut tool to just cut those faces in half. As soon as I was done that, it got into Unreal with no problem. And the only thing I had to do was when I imported it as a geometry cache, I had to reapply the textures, but it gave me a chance to like repaint the textures because I wanted it to look like Cyclops.
That rig wasn't actually Cyclops, was it?
It's a rig called the Mercenary rig. Yeah, he had, the basic hair controls. He had like the wire controls. All I had to do was add the little X-Men button on his chest.
So now that you've got it into Unreal Engine, so what's next? So cameras, do you start creating the environments? What's your process like at this stage, Trent?
So the first thing I did was make sure that my environment the rough idea of it was there so that then I could animate the mover.
When you say scene mover, that's essentially you need to move them through space, so you parent it to like a locator or a null without having to like travel 4,000 feet or 10,000 feet, and it's like a pain to like work in that space, isn't it?
It's just the cleanest way to do it. A little bit of the challenge that I was worried about with this one, somebody moving through nothing, movement doesn't work so well. I was like, okay, well, he's going to be falling through the clouds. So I put a bunch of clouds in there.
Where'd you get the clouds from?
My first inclination was to use cloud cards because, again, coming from Previz, that's what we use all the time. And they're still in the scene because they're super light. I ended up looking into VDBs, which is a relatively new thing. And that's because I wanted to do art-directed clouds. I've seen all the animated, Unreal shorts out there. People have ways to do this. And that's honestly one of the best parts about working in Unreal is there's such a good community out there. Luckily, I was able to find a video by Winbush about making your own sparse texture volume. Another one of my goals here was to not spend money on assets at all. I downloaded the VDBs from Embergen and I downloaded 2 different clouds and small dust impact. The cameras in this sequence, I actually used this camera set from Tide TKE, was his YouTube channel, and he's got this set of anamorphic camera lenses you can use in Unreal. It was really fun because I got to like download these assets, and it's a blueprint in Unreal that you get to put into the camera component. So I brought it into my project. You have this pack of like Panavision lenses, and whenever I've done post-viz, you always have to be well aware if you're tracking or anything. You have to be well aware of the camera that is being used.
Can you just give a little bit of information about what post-viz is?
What they shoot is sometimes on green screen, sometimes it's in real life, but they want to extend it. And so the point of post-viz is like a first pass of all those finals effects. This specific camera is, I think it's like a 4 focal length. It's a 2 focal length, which is crazy, but...
Whoa, that is crazy.
I
Well,
know.
I guess that's the fun, when you're in an animated TV show, you can really exaggerate things for that kind of graphical kind of moment,
Yeah, absolutely. And I would never recommend it to anyone else. Like if you're trying to make something realistic, don't use a 2 focal length. I don't know if maybe those exist somewhere, but they don't often use those for anything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Trent, here, that the quickest part of this for you was the animation, but
Yeah.
then the longest was like the art direction of getting clouds right.
Coming from finals, and now it's been a couple years, but like I have the work of cats like scarred in my brain, so but like when we work there, we'd come in whatever and just like body mechanics, like. And so by that time my contract up there was done and I moved back, the skill of like quick animation that I got out of that has been priceless in Previz.
Yeah.
Because you can't waste time on animation. That's why I liked this little sequence. I'm like, I see this pose, I see that pose, I see this pose, I did it. And then I do a couple in betweens, and I do a lot of secondary because he's falling. He's not shaking really at all in the reference. His stoicism works in 2D, but in 3D it doesn't work. Like you're not going to be falling like that and be totally still unless you're like Tom Cruise or something. But yeah, I really wanted those circular clouds so bad. I tried so many different things, and the people that I've talked to since, they were telling me like, yeah, I could use Niagara effects and do like particle clouds to make it go out. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. And that's the thing about, I have a couple years experience working with phenomenal people. They have so many great ideas. And sometimes I can't always apply all of these things, or like I finish something and, there's always something like, oh, you could have done that.
There's this tool, there's that tool. It can be quite overwhelming to think, there's so many things.
As my career grows and as the years go on, I want to be like so many other people. I want more like, leadership roles, or, long-term goal if I ever want to be a supervisor. The hard part about those is making like the executive decisions. Personally, that's what was fun here, is like I can be super critical on myself and I can make my own executive decisions. And there's things that maybe I would have done. There's still things I would have done different, but like, I think that's even a big part in Previz. You can't sell anything if you're not like all about it, even though there's things that I think this would be like perfectly passable Previz. I would,
Definitely,
never
man.
pass this for like anything even beyond that.
What's it like working on your own compared to working in a team of people? Because, no one's looking over your shoulder and no one's got to like pick up the shot. Can you get away with more stuff, and are you a bit more messy? Or
That's probably one of the things that like is the easiest and first thing to like slip up when you're working on your own is project file organization.
I'll just save it to the desktop.
Yeah, just exactly. Yeah, like I'll know where it is. I'll open up the curtain and show you my content folder here. I would normally be way more organized than this. So like,
Don't worry about it.
disclaimer, yeah. For this, I was like, I want to keep the VDBs out of my project file because I'm going to be going into that the most, right? I use some clouds and skies from a different file, and it just gets put outside of my little hierarchy. Normally, whenever I start a project, and everywhere I've worked has had this, like you have your assets, your character, your environment, your effects, your cameras. For Unreal, I like keeping my level outside of the tree because it's one of the first things that you click, and you should have your sequences in a file. And sometimes I've had issues with moving in Unreal, like one folder into another. Sometimes it just takes a while, and I'm like, man, I want to work on this. Like, I don't want to wait an hour. Or
Yeah, it kind of reconnects things, doesn't it? Even just like putting a folder into a folder, it kind of updates all the relationships, and it can take a little bit of time. So it's like, I'll just leave it there for now.
it's good. It's effective how it moves things around, but it just, like you said, it takes a minute.
Let's break down a few of the comparison shots.
Oh, of course. Actually, I would love to then start with the first one. In the sequence in the show, there's an explosion in the ship and they get scattered across the sky. The camera pushes in, and I kind of grappled with that for a second. Like, okay, do I want an explosion in the foreground? Maybe show like someone from the ground's point of view, maybe like a streak of smoke leaving the explosion, and you zoom in, and I was like, I don't want this to be what kills me here. And one of the notes I got from one of my old friends, which I think was phenomenal, was making it seem like the camera was having trouble kind of keeping up with him.
And that's the thing, isn't it, when you're with Previs and learning camera techniques, how would they shoot that? I guess they can get away with it a little bit more in the animated version, of course, but in our world it's kind of like, would a camera just like fall through the sky? You wouldn't be on a crane, it would be somebody else falling with them. You've got to consider those things to get realistic cameras if that's what you're going for.
I was trying to think of the shake of what would be, someone nervously following someone who's like diving like this. So a very like medium to low amplitude but high frequency shake. I like animating camera shake. I think everyone likes animating camera shake a little bit.
Sometimes a little bit too much for some people.
Yeah, I think my first pass of this, or most of my first passes, like, you animate your camera shake and then you just cut it all in half, and then that's probably where it should be.
I'm not aiming at you, by the way, Trent, by the way.
No,
I'm just
dude,
saying.
it is. That's that's how I've had to approach it. No. Yeah, and so I was really happy with this shot where he goes by camera.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Especially in Previz, where like you're animating a shot, and sometimes the best thing that you can do to get the feel of the camera is to make the sounds yourself.
Yeah.
And this is a really good example,
You just go, vroom.
Yeah, like hunched over my computer, making vroom noises,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I got it. Okay, sweet. Here's where it gets different, right? Is this laser beam. I showed this to my friend Mauricio, and he was like, maybe it'd be fun if when he does his laser blast, it pushes the camera back, and I love that.
Like a parachute where they pull back a little bit.
Yeah. I think one of the funnest things that I've had throughout the years of learning about camera animation and how to do like a good shot is the different kind of levels that you can utilize with really simple movements to make a shot feel focused on what you like, to guide the eye. What do we have going on here? He is lasering the ground. So we know our main character is him because he's the biggest thing in the shot, but I think our eyes go to and stick with the motion of him lasering that center, one, because it's centered, and our eyes look there easily because of the matching the cut on the previous action.
The composition changes on this shot because of the pose in the previous shot, so you have to kind of adapt. I imagine that in this one, if that hand wasn't there, it might just feel a bit like dead space on the left, like what's that there for? So it kind of holds that part to focus more in the center.
And you can see, if I took his arm out, you'd probably be able to see the edges of some of the assets that I put in there too, so it kind of has that
strategic placement as well.
Yeah. And actually, so the next big challenge here was this 2D effect of the ball explosion. I made an After Effects, made a little square. It was maybe like 720 by 720, and I animated like fat lines just go one diagonal to the other, one diagonal to the other, one diagonal to the other, 5-second long clip, and I put it on a sphere and I just like translated it up, and I think it turned out pretty good. I did not expect that to turn out good. I was like, man, it'd be such a cool effect to have in there. Sometimes it's as simple as that,
What kind of After Effects stuff went on with this project?
Actually, speaking of post-viz tactics being used in Previz, I had an issue here. The Niagara components were going in front of my VDBs when it was rendering out. It's like an issue with the render, and you can see here the beam popped in front of the smoke. Like I would do in post-viz, I grabbed part of the plate and moved it over, and I was like, well, no one's gonna notice, and it works,
Yeah, definitely. So I know how to do it in the post-viz world. I'll provide it in the previous world, and then just make sure more versatile kind of artist to kind of adapt to little things like that, because you got to be quick, and because
sometimes those like render times or the research times will kill you, so you just gotta like
I can't re-render that again.
Yeah, and you know what I realized with Unreal too is that the camera shake, at least that I was getting, was randomized. So if I had something that was animated in the scene, for example, like an effect somewhere near the bottom of the contact where the laser was hitting the ground, if I re-rendered it, suddenly that would be somewhere else.
The pack that we use, it's a Cinemotion. Have you used that one?
I don't think I've used Cinemotion.
They're like keyframe ones that you just drag and blend together. It's really good, actually. I think it's fairly cheap and really easy to use as well. Have you got any kind of advice for artists that want to do a little kind of personal project like this, I guess in the previous world, it's
Natural inclination is to put up those walls and to think that you can't do certain things. You can do anything, but make sure that you have the reference for it. If you're doing your own short film, Previs, make sure you have the assets. If you're doing something in Unreal, download the free assets from the Unreal Marketplace. That is going to be every single month they release new free assets. If you want something that's like high quality, use that. But I think the biggest thing is to be patient and to plan well, because if you get frustrated with like certain aspects, if you're like, man, I can't figure out how to do a laser, or I don't like how Niagara smoke is looking, so I'm just going to give up. There's so much good resources out there for Unreal. And the more that people use these assets, the more that people like work on projects that are maybe just a little too big for their britches, but they're trying, the more people are going to be talking about it out there, and there's more problem solving that's going to be going on. I hope people make little projects like this. I hope people maybe they had a weird dream and want to make it into a short film, maybe, or saw a cool movie and they want to remake a sequence. Like, it's great because it benefits not only you to climb that hill, but maybe you'll encounter an issue and you'll solve it, and then you can share that with everybody. So
it's just spreading that, things across the community. It's just super helpful for everybody involved,
Yeah.
Thanks for that advice, Trent. I mean, that was really great to kind of dive into that process. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention about the process that you forgot, or
something about the process that also I really would like to see more people do is using Maya assets in Unreal? I feel like everybody has a program or a process that they love to like champion. And a lot of the times I see people, I think they're scared to get into Unreal because maybe they don't want to animate a metahuman. If anyone watching this took anything away, is that if they're comfortable in Maya, maybe they learned in Maya, maybe they're working in Maya in wherever studio they're at right now or something. Don't overthink it. Just animate your character in Maya and bring it into Unreal. And then you get to do all the fun, like adding the bells and whistles and glitter in Unreal. And that's, when you look at it in the fun way like that, I think it's a lot more approachable.
Definitely. That's a great piece of advice, because it can be off-putting, but if you think you need to learn a particular way, it can throw you off. But just start with what you know, and then you learn bit by bit. And then who knows, like down the line, you might go, you know what? I'm just going to do it all in Unreal Engine because I've learned these little things along the way, but I started with something that I was comfortable with, and that works for me.
Yeah, everyone's going to learn at their own pace, and it's sometimes the early like steps of learning is being comfortable in a program like Unreal because it's so big and heavy, and just navigating it is weird.
Well, thanks, Trent. I hope you had a great time because that was really enjoyable for us, so thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking about that.
All right then, Trent. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch up soon, man.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.